and forth, but I'll just start talking here and try to go slow, slow enough that that it all makes sense. It's a little difficult, like talking to a wall here on WebEx, but here we go. First thing I want to point out is that everything that I'm going to cover today is in the Confluence page for the release of what's new. And most of you, if not all, have access to this page. If you don't, it's just a matter of making sure you get signed up for our online customer portal, and then you'll have access to this. So the items that I'm going to go into today have the learn more next to them because they're a little deeper, a little more relevant to all. And some of the more minor changes that we've done are listed here, and you can go to the Confluence page and see what those items are as well. But we won't cover everything that was in the release, just some key items. As we cover these items, some of these I will just speak to, some of them I will do an overview. This is by no means a training, but these Confluence articles are deep enough that you could probably set up most of what we're talking about today yourself, or call our team for assistance, or if you have other questions. So with that, I want to kick it off. And the first item that I want to cover is something that I wanted to start with something that would appeal to most, something that most could use. We've added an operator alert in ticket entry. This idea stems from someone that's on this call as a customer today, and we talked about it for a while, and it kept getting pushed out on release after release, and it was something we wanted to just make sure that we got handled. So what we've done is you have the ability now, if you want to set up a flashing weigh key in oneWeigh if you don't have a first wait. Because when we're processing the trucks through, we're grading, especially the smaller operations where we have one person doing everything manually, weighing that truck sometimes can be forgotten. So we were just looking for a way to alert the operator that the weight wasn't taken yet. So again, I'll kind of go through this article a little more in depth just to show what our articles look like. We put why we do things, in the benefit, a description of what it's the functionality is, and then how to set it up. And this one's real simple because it's very simple to set up, and I will demonstrate this. So I have weight on my scale and I don't have any tickets. I'm going to add a ticket, but I'm not going to weigh the truck. I'm going to pick out who's on the scale first and work with my commodity. And you can see over here that the weigh button flashes red. It will continue to flash red as an operator alert until a weight is taken, and capture the weight, and then the red goes away. If you have multiple tickets that haven't been weighed, then you'll bounce between them. This one's not going to flash. This ticket here is going to flash and say that we need to get a weight on it. So very straightforward as far as how it works, as far as how it's set up, something that should be beneficial, I believe, to a lot of people. So one more note on this is, again, just to call out where the deeper settings are. The vehicle off-scale threshold is a setting that's in the scale driver, and we set a value in there to maybe, let's say, 5,000 pounds, something like that, so that it will flash that weigh key. So this vehicle off-scale threshold is an important setting to make this work. And in the setup of oneWeigh, we actually have a hover tip over this item when you go to click it on that tells you where to go to set up the threshold value. So that's our first item. So we'll move on to our second, which deals with ticket recovery. So we've all been here. Sometimes we get off the happy path, things don't go right, and somehow we lose an export file. I know that we've got a mix of customers online that do ticket posts direct into the Agris system. When we print the ticket, it's directly in the live data set, but we still have a fairly large number of people that also do the flat file export still. And the ticket recovery module that we've added to oneWeigh is to make it easy and simple for you guys to regenerate your tickets, whether they're ticket post or flat files yourself. Right now, today, I think we all know it's a little bit of a task to go into Agris to generate this file. Now, over the years, we've probably gotten pretty good at it. New users, it really is very cumbersome to do that. So I'll go through this item just to show that there's a lot of information here that I won't cover as far as how to, or as far as how it works and what you can do with it. You know, there's some things to consider. You know, we don't want you to, we're going to pop up a warning if you're going to get more than 1,000 tickets because you probably didn't set something in your ticket range right. And then there's just more explanation of the individual items. So let's generate that. Let's go into ticket recovery. This item can be secured against, just like any of these items with system security. So if you don't want, if you don't want this open to all users, then set up your security and make sure ticket recovery is blocked to them. I'm going to go into ticket recovery. And we made it very simple by default. Everything should be right. Very few people run multiple locations on a single oneWeigh. The date that you want to get the tickets for, it's very simple. Don't worry about your Agris position date, anything like that. This is just straight. What was the date that the ticket was generated on? If we want to get very specific, we can actually just find a ticket number. Down here in the bottom, you'll see that I've got Agris export file because that's what this data set is set to. If I had ticket post working on this data set, ticket post would be available as well. And again, it's going to default to everything that's set up currently for these outputs. So I'm going to go back to yesterday. And I'm going to say, I'm just going to do yesterday's tickets. And I'm not going to separate by inbound and outbound. I'm just going to do recover tickets. System pops up. Okay, you did 3 tickets yesterday. It automatically sets the path of where it's going to write the flat file to. So I'm going to say this is good. And I'm going to recover tickets. And this pop-up here tells us that we built the file and to check our communicator settings for results. And what that means is down here in the bottom, our ticket communicator comes up. Those of you that use ticket post are familiar with this. If you don't use ticket post, it only comes up when you are recovering your file. If you're not, it will go away after that. It's not going to be something that's always on your system. But this tells us that we did successfully recover these tickets and it was a flat file. So we'll go look at that. Oh, close out of here. It closes down communicator. And we'll jump over to tickets folder. So this is the file I just recovered. Here's my 3 tickets that I did yesterday. My 2 inbounds, my 1 outbound. This is the electronic copy of the PDF. And just to show that it did have 3 tickets that came up in my recovery. If for some reason I just wanted to pick one of those tickets, I could. I am going to go ahead and do one more thing just to show how specific we can get. But in ticket recovery, I say I just want the outbound tickets from yesterday. And there's the 1 outbound ticket. I'll recover it, close out. And again, here's my file, but there is only 1 ticket in that file. It's that outbound ticket right here from the 19th. So really a much better way to recover tickets. It's something that, doesn't happen a lot per location, but if you have 20 or 40 locations, the chances are that you run into it, maybe a couple of times a month where you need to do this. So we wanted to make that easier for everyone to be able to perform that and hopefully save you a call to support as well. So moving on, I'm going to move to data replication service. There's 2 things in data replication service that I want to cover. I think most are familiar with what data replication is. It's the ability to sync specific data between the Agris live data set out to all of the oneWeighs. And most often we're doing name updates pretty frequently, and we often send discount table changes as well. So what we want to do is make sure that there is a way that if data replication service is not running, that we proactively give you alerts on it rather than you having to check to see how things are going, or worse, you get a call from a location that it's not working. So what we can do now, if it's not working, we will send an email to a specific address, and here's all the settings to set this up. If you've set up any email in Agris before, it's very much the same thing, especially around CFT. If you've not, it's very straightforward. I won't go into the setup, but it will send that. There's a few rules around this. If at 10 o'clock in the morning you stop communicating to site 100, you will get one email that you're not communicating to site 100. And rather than every time we try to communicate to site 100 and fail, send you an email each time. So let's say you send name updates once an hour. If it fails at 10 o'clock in the morning, you'll get an email. If it fails at 11, you will not. If it fails at noon, you will not. If you, once the issue is resolved because you get that email, then we do send a follow-up email that lets you know that the communication was successful. And I've got an example here of what that looks like. So this would be that we were trying to update the grain discount tables, and we couldn't reach the oneWeigh. We couldn't post this information. It tells us the message number. This is, important to us. It tells you in English what it was trying to do, and it tells you which machine and data set it was trying to update, and gives you a little bit of information. We give as much information here as we can about the error, so hopefully it's something that you can solve on your own. If it's not clear in this message, then maybe the error log will give you something, and if not, of course, it's beneficial to the support team to have this email. Once we do establish communication again, here is the email that will go out. It'll tell you that for that location, that message was successful and the issue has been resolved. So, and you can see it's up here in the header as well. So again, that's with data replication and proactive emails if things are not communicating. So if you have data replication, you move to this version, I would highly recommend getting this set up. The next item, so used to taking questions in between. The next item, also around data replication service, also around communication and setup, is we've added some test buttons to accomplish a few things. One, to have more test buttons where we're actually working. So if we want to test all of our data replication integrations, we've got a button on the front screen. If we want to test a single message, because maybe we think it might be data related, and we can test a single message. And if we want to go to all active items screen, there's a test button there that'll run through the test. And it's very important to note that we are not actually sending updates into the system. We are connecting and making sure that, for lack of a better word, our path to posting everything in to the remote oneWeigh data set, that it's all online, active, and we have the rights to do it. But we're not writing data. In the past, to troubleshoot this, we might have had to add a name at the main site, or we know that we've added a name at the main site and it's not going out to the remote site, and we'd have to look for that name. And we'd actually be having to push real data down to the oneWeigh. So that's another nice thing about these buttons. And I'm just going to show those real quick. And this may be something that you even, maybe if you have the issue once you work with support, but you see it executed and you come back and know that next time, hey, I can do that one myself. So again, on the main page, this would, if we hit test here, it's going to test all these communications that are set up. And that means, test the extract and then try to post. If we want to test a specific message, we can open up the name extract like we did here, and then we can just test it. Just by pushing the test button, it's going to try to go out to the live server and run through and make sure it can do an extract, and go to the oneWeigh and make sure it can do a post. And same thing here for all extracts. There's the test button as well. So 2 things in data replication service that we wanted to put in to try to make it easier to handle things again when we get off the happy path. There's quite a bit in this release around being able to quickly recover when there are issues. And that's just 2 more of them. So we'll move on and we'll talk about Pit Router, quick access button. First of all, I will say that maybe not everybody is familiar with Pit Router. And if not, that came out in a prior release. I believe it was 20.1 or 20.2. And what we do is based on just this commodity alone, or the commodity and some grade factors, we can automatically populate the pit assignment on the oneWeigh chalkboard. And if you think about it, especially those that have automation, this would be very beneficial, because to get that driver to go to the correct pit that you want to drive him to, maybe corn's going to pit 1 all day long, all week long, corn's going to pit 1. If you don't use Pit Router today, your operator has to somewhere, either in a remark field or up here on the chalkboard, assign pit 1 so that that message goes out to the driver. So let's take a quick look at how we can, or what this enhancement is, which is, it's not Pit Router itself, that's been there a while. This is how we can quickly change the pits without having to go into setup to do so. So on my system here, I have added that ticket. See, let's do this. We'll start a new one. So I'm gonna add a ticket and say that it is soybeans. Take a weight and just put in a test weight and put in a moisture. And just soybeans alone, go to pit 3. And I say, you know what, that's not right. I don't want, the pit calls up, says pit 3's down, send beans to pit 6 for simplicity's sake. So I can just click that button for a Pit Router and go into soybeans and say that we're going to pit 6 and save it. Close it, add another ticket, go to soybeans. I need to have at least 1 grade factor on the ticket before we calculate this, and take a weight, and you can see that this is now assigned pit number 6. And that's quite a savings. If you do several hundred trucks a day and you're not using Pit Router, then that's several hundred clicks you save an operator if you get Pit Router set up. The other thing with Pit Router is not just the pit, but let's say we've got corn here, and currently we have corn up to 14% moisture going to pit 1, and we have 14.1 and above going to pit 2. And we can also change these and say, you know what, we're going to go 15.1 goes to pit 1 now, and 15.2 and above, Steve, goes to pit 2. So covering both types of scenarios that we have with Pit Router, 1 commodity, multiple pits based on usually moisture, or just the commodity per pit and how we change that. The other thing about this is that if you are using the moisture meter interface or grading interface, and you have the ticket up, then as soon as, well, it doesn't matter if the ticket's up or not, after a grade post from the moisture meter, it will auto calculate the pit. We don't have to hit the save button or take a weight or anything like that. So once the meter posts into these two fields and pit router is set up for that commodity, then your pit number will show up over here. So that is the extent of that one. Sorry, having a display problem here. All right, the next item I want to look at is AutoID Backup. And this is AutoID, whether you're using AutoID for driver cards that they're scanning and pulls in information about that customer, or these are load orders that you set up manually in your system or imported into AutoID, or whether these are one freight orders. It applies to anything that's in AutoID, and we've got an automatic backup now. So today, as it sits, if you had 1,000 cards issued to your customer base at a location and you lost the oneWeigh and you did not have a backup or a recent backup, then you would lose that card information and you'd have to set it up. Luckily, it's something that we haven't run into much, but it was also something that rather than just relying on customers' backups and making sure that they're done, we've put in a specific backup for AutoID. So I'll go into the setup in a minute and show that. But you know, if it's off, we don't have an automatic one, but you can still do a manual if you want to. We can back them up every 2 hours, every 4 hours, or every day. And when we back these up, we're not just overriding the last backup, because we started thinking if somebody does multiple backups during the day, maybe they want a different restore point. Maybe your auto IDs get wiped out or corrupted or something happens to them and then a backup runs. Well, that's not the one you want to restore. So we do 10 backups and then we replace the oldest backup, number 10, with the next backup. So that way we can make sure that if we did a backup of an auto ID file that had been damaged or lost information, that we can go back and get the right one. So I'll show that real quick. So workstation information, again, the Confluence article tells you where it's at, and auto ID. And I'm set to backup every day to this folder. And before I came in here, I should have done something. I want to show that I don't have any auto IDs right now. So I currently have no auto IDs available. Back here in setup information, workstation. I'm going to do a restore from the path that I'm backing up to. And I didn't actually put mine all the way down to the folder. So there's the backup that I want to pull in, open it, restore successful. And we'll come out and see what I've got for auto IDs. Well, look at that. I didn't have any. I think I overwrote my file. I think I did. I think I copied an overwritten file. I'll go into ticket entry and take a look at it. Yep, my file was blank. So anyhow, that will restore those auto IDs. I'm pretty sure that file was blank. We don't want to sit here and I'm not going to waste your time looking at it. We will come back to that though, because I have a good auto ID backup file to restore. Along the same lines, from the auto ID is Bulkway. We have some risk with bulkwayers. So those of you that have bulkways, there's a configuration file. So when we set up a bulkway and we set up the timings, the draft size, the pre-acts, everything that makes your bulkwayer run well, the jog tables, is stored in a configuration file. And what happens, two things happen. Sometimes that configuration file, an operator simply, you know, makes some changes, and then we can't get back to what we had unless we have the paper printout of the system from when we first installed it. The other thing that can happen is, let's say that there's a power surge or something of that nature, and the controller on the wall maybe has its memory erased. The operator is presented with a pop-up screen that, because we do a check and says, hey, the computer program doesn't match what's on the controller. Which one should take precedence? And if that question gets answered the wrong way and says update the controller, I'm sorry, update the computer with what's on the controller, and the controller got set back to 0 overnight due to a lightning storm or something, then we've lost our setup. So very simply, what we've done is anytime that there's a change made to the Bulkway configuration, we make a backup copy. So this is something that, some of you could get this yourself off of the Confluence page, but also just keep in mind for support, it's going to be super easy for us to get you set back up, because this file right here is the backup file that it's using, and it's corrupt or it's gone or somebody made changes, we don't know, and it doesn't run right. We go back to our last backup. It's the same file name, but it's got the date and time that the backup was done, and we rename it and we go back into Bulkway. It will load all of your settings that were there before. The flip side of this, and some of you have had this happen, is that it turns into a multiple hour reset up of the scale because we've lost that information. So again, that's the automatic backup of the Bulkway file, a Bulkway configuration file. Moving on, the next item revolves around our alert router, which I'll just cover that quickly in case some of you aren't using that, but the alert router can send you emails when specific events happen at the scale. So deleted tickets, manual waits, whatever is in our audit log here, we can have an email sent when those events happen. So that's already been there. That was there several releases ago. What this specific item is this, we want to be able to give the scale operator the ability to put on the ticket. It doesn't print on the ticket. You wouldn't print this remark on the ticket, but it's still on his one-way screen. He can have a remark, and it's the audit reason. So you come in and select which remark you want to use for the audit reason, and then what happens when an event occurs at the scale. And the normal email goes out that says, hey, at site 101, someone deleted a ticket at this time and date. So our normal email here, this is all there before, but at the bottom here, the audit reason, the operator has a chance to say, hey, it was just a duplicate ticket. So not a big deal. What was happening is people would get alerts that something was happening at the scale, and then they'd have to follow up and say, why did we do that? This way, the operator can be trained that, if you need to do a manual wait, whatever, go to the audit reason, put in there why you did it, and, we won't be calling you to double check why. So that is the audit reason for alert router. And if you're using alert router, I really think that you want to have that to give your operators, that ability, so that when you get the email, you can immediately decide, okay, yep, it's not a big deal, and move on, rather than have to spend your time chasing that down. The next item actually utilizes kind of the same philosophy here of using a remark field, but in this case, we're using a remark field to store the scale descriptions. So there's instances where we need to be able to actually, on a scale ticket, put the scale description. So in your one-way setup, if you set your scale description as, you know, north inbound and your other scale description as, you know, south outbound or whatever, or maybe you have two inbound scales, you've got a north and a south inbound scale. By workstation, you can now designate which remark field to populate that scale description. So this scale description here, Rice Lake 720, would, if we take the first weight with it, then it's going to populate remark number 2. Some people actually need this on tickets where they have many scales in a facility, and that state requires it or would like to have it. So it's something that we put there. Other people want to have it just so that they could, if they wanted to run a report on this, they could. Again, which scale took the weight and all of that is also going to be in our audit log. So it's not the only way to get this information, but it is the best way to get this information and be able to print it on a ticket. Moving on. So this next item deals with an extended option that we have, which is PLC interface, which some of you use, others it may be new to you, but really with PLC interface, we just want to be able to exchange information quickly and efficiently with plant control so that we can eliminate double entry. And to date, it's mainly gone from oneWeigh to plant control. So maybe we're at the pit and we scan a card at the pit and we send the commodity that's associated with this ticket along with the grade factors to the plant control system. Plant control system then sets up the routing for that load. So that's how we use it today. This enhancement is so that, and I realize that not everyone's, you know, elevators support this today, you know, or maybe you have a few that would support it. But what this is doing is the plant control, where in elevators where the plant control system is making the binning decision, then once that binning decision is made, that information is sent back to oneWeigh, and oneWeigh populates the bin site information on the ticket. So so this is for using when you're using bin site and you have a plant control system that can communicate back to oneWeigh, which is a very simple communication, then the operator can be removed from selecting the bin site bin. And if we think about it, a lot of times we might put the bin site bin on at the scale because that's just, you know, where we've been putting that commodity with those grade qualities all day. But when the truck reaches the pit, that might change. And, you know, today we have ways to change that through, you know, pit commander or, you know, calling up to the scale and telling them that you're putting it in a different bin, or it gets missed and it's assumed it went into that bin and it didn't. So for elevators that already let the plant control system select the bin, as long as they have the bin site bins set up the same way, you know, named the same way on the PLC side, it sends the information to oneWeigh and then oneWeigh will populate it. I have an example here where we're doing this with serial communication. It could be IP, but in this case, it's serial, and this is just saying what port are we going to listen for the bin site assignment on, and then from that point forward, we're always listening. And part of the string of data that comes back from plant control is the sample number, so that we can match up that bin. And there's more information here as well. So I won't spend much more time on that because, you know, the majority of PLCs aren't in this state today, but the move is going that direction. So next two items I want to talk about deal with self check-in. Again, it's another newer item that we have, and this is some changes that we've made as we've expanded the use in our customer base of self check-in. We wanted to get quick entry. So real quick, self check-in is letting the driver start the ticket himself, whether it's at a walk-up, whether it's in a kiosk, and it's usually a combination of using his card, and depending on, at that point, depending on the type of facility you're at, that may be all. So the quick entry we added because the first rollout of this was more in processing plants, and we need a prompt for things like last product hauled, maybe origin bill lading number, things of that nature we need to prompt for. So it was pretty prompt heavy. But rolling it into a country elevator where we just want to get the trucks in and a driver is going to haul the same way for 10 to 20 loads, we wanted to basically be able to skip to the end. So this article is quite in depth on how it works, but just to show quickly um, how it's used in the scenario I just described is we have last load recall, which are the items that we're going to remember about a transaction. And it usually applies to the entire site. And when a driver comes in this case, the last customer name, the last vehicle ID, the last commodity, last contract number, and last other reference field are all populated on the ticket when he starts it. Prior to this enhancement of quick entry, we would have had to prompt and also popped up some validations while he's doing this. So think of this as being at the ATM, you just want to get 20 bucks out and you've had to answer 10 questions at the ATM. So we wanted to shorten that. And what it looks like now, we'll go through the setup here. I said this is a very in-depth document. It can be set up this way that the driver scans his card is scanned, with system jumps right to the screen. And if the commodities change, he clicks edit and changes it. If customers change, he clicks edit and changes it here. Again, 9 times out of 10, this is going to be correct. So the driver now scans his card, comes to the screen, most likely hits submit. If he needs to edit something, it'll take him back to the commodity section. He can select a different commodity and it'll bring him back here to this screen and he hits submit. So it's all about speed. When we have several data fields that we want to recall each time, but we don't want to prompt the driver each time for input on those fields. So it's called quick entry for self check-in. The next item along the same lines, and I put this in because early adopters of self check-in definitely have this going on. So it's the ability to skip the start message. So if we think about self check-in, in a lot of cases, we are using it with the card system. In cases that we aren't, we do need this start button. So it displays on the screen for the customer. It says press here to start. They press start, and then we start prompting them for their input, and then we start a ticket. This is overkill, and to return to that screen when we have a tag session going. So instead of saying directions here for a driver and saying start ticket, which we do need at some places, it goes more like this. And it says it's saying, please enter your ID number. It would say scan your tag. And this also falls in line for people that were on the older message board system only and had the driver, first thing that happened when he pulled in is it said, please scan your card. We can now one-to-one, okay, we're not using the message board anymore. We're using this self-check-in touchscreen over here, but you still do the same thing. You scan your card, and then like the prior one, hopefully we're jumping to the end, edit anything. If it's all correct, hit submit. So wanted to cover those. Again, early adopters of self-check-in, you don't have this option, and this would be something that you would want to jump to. With that, I will also just want to mention 2 more things real quick before we get into questions. There was other work done here in this release around the OneView application, which some of you are aware of that we've been working on, which is looking at your facilities from a facility or regional or headquarter roll-up dashboard. So there was quite a bit of work done around that in oneWeigh to support the OneView project, which is continuing. So if there's any questions on that, you can just reach out to us and after this call. The other thing I want to show, since we didn't do this last year, for oneWeigh specifically, I wanted to just quickly cover, when you come to the Confluence uh, page, the last year's what's new is pretty important. So I'm not going to go in depth on these items, but 20.1 is when Alert Router was introduced, and it tells you what Alert Router does. We don't go in depth on how to set it up. Also in 20.1, we had an extended option available for it's attach one, so that we can attach documents at the scale quickly and easily, attach supporting documents at the scale, print them as the additional pages of the electronic PDF so that they could go into document management, whether that's attached to or another document management system. And we were trying to eliminate all the post scale activity of scanning and stapling that goes on with documents. We had the audit log, the ability to export daily, everything that happened in the audit log, whether it's everything or a custom report. And in Bulkway, another pretty important item is that we were able to generate a PDF, automatically generate a PDF at the end of the order of the draft by draft tape that we legally have to print on the journal printer today. So the journal printer still prints out, but at the same time, we can make a PDF of that draft by draft tape, locally on the network share. If someone sitting down in the office wants to open it and see what went on the car, if they're doing billing or something, you can do that in real time. Um, a lot around self check-in and ticket entry. That's 20.1. It was a pretty big release. Coming into 20.2, just wanted to call out one of the main things here. That is where Pit Router was introduced, but also something for those on the phone. A lot of you maintain the oneWeigh systems, and we have the ability to purge information at the oneWeigh through a menu option that doesn't, we're not rebuilding files, we're not copying files. It's literally on the menu to purge history, and then you go in and you set the date that you want to purge back to, and then you remove that history. Why would you purge history on a oneWeigh? Mainly because when it comes time to convert and upgrade and do a data set conversion, if you've got 10 years worth of history there, you probably don't need it, and you can set how far back to go. You don't have to wipe, you can wipe it all out, or you can just wipe it back down to a certain date. So those are the items. Obviously there's 20.3, not so much in 20.3. We were working under the hood on OneView more than anything during this release. So with that, it feels like I talked really fast, but we've got 9 minutes left. Travis, are there any questions?
Yeah, we've got a few. So let's, we've got a few sitting in the QA, and then I'll unmute everybody and kind of open the floor. So thank you, Steve. Appreciate all that. So the first two questions wrap around or circle back to the ticket recovery functionality. First question, and I guess they kind of piggyback on each other, but the ticket recovery, the question was asked, does ticket recovery append to the file if it already exists? And then the second part of that is, can you specify a different name than the default for regular tickets? So can you change the name, and does it append to the file if it already exists?
Okay, so let's look at that live. It's easier to look at live. And definitely on going somewhere else. So let's go to the 19th here. Not the 13th, do the 19th again. And I'm going to do the export file, flat file right here. You can change it. So, and I think we were 50-50 on this. We went ahead and defaulted it in from what you have in station information, but we know that a lot of times, maybe this isn't even something you want to send back to headquarters. Maybe it's just something you want for your own reference. You want to pull the file, maybe you need to give it to a counterparty, something like that. You have the ability here to change it just by clicking this button, and then you can change it to wherever you want. Now I'm going to go ahead and recover and see what happened. And I'm going to recover again because I too It's weird, while I had the requirements for appending and not appending on this, I'm going to double check what it's doing. So we can all see here that it is a 15K file now. And I'm going to recover again and going to do all of those. And we will see if that file grew. And it does. So it is appending the file and adding to it as we do this. So I can see that being a benefit if I was trying to pick tickets from certain days and wanted to get them all in one file. Then, maybe I went back to the 17th, found a ticket that I wanted from then, went to the 19th, found 2 tickets I wanted. I would recover the 17th first, recover the 19th next. They'd be in the same file. So it does add to it, and it looks like it duplicates it. And I believe that is also covered in the Confluence article. It's because there's a lot of things in here to consider.
Thanks, Steve. Second question, or third question, I should say, because that was 2. Third of 4 that are sitting in the QA, and then I'll open the floor. Wraps around or comes back to data replication services. The question is, can data replication service be used to push out new standard forms? I think we know the answer to that, but I'll let you speak to that, please.
Right. No, it can't. DRS can't be used to push out forms. Also, initially, although we're growing into it a little more, we tried to keep even setup information not going out. It's more for, because those are more one-time events. So essentially, we've got a lot more frequent events to look at. A form change or form design is more of a one-time event. I realize that if you have 41 ways, and that's 40 times you've got to load that form. But today, it doesn't push it out. Same with commodity, commodity setup. I mean, how many times are we adding a commodity? Not often. Again, if we did add one, then yes, it's got to be added at every one-way, but we just don't have a lot of commodities being added. What we have is the discount tables changing under those commodities, which is what we send. And yeah. So you had a fourth one there, Travis?
I do. Last one, come back to pit router. Question is, does pit router work with variety class or just the base root commodity?
Good question. Let's go set it up. I think it's going to work with, I don't remember where we ended up on that with the VC. So if you're using variety class, I'm quite certain that it opens up VC right here. I just am not using variety class. So my instinct is yes. It's just that I'm not using VC on this data set. If it's not, it could be. I know that we have a way to get to variety class through it. And I believe it says a commodity on this line. It's going to say commodity variety class. And either this button opens up all the VC under corn, or it's all listed in here. So that one I can't confirm right now. I can get a confirmation on that later, because I don't think I have a variety class data set up.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So at this point, that was all of them that were actually logged into the QA box. I'm going to go ahead and open the floor. It's probably going to get a little loud, possibly, but absolutely want to be able to take some questions. We still have a few minutes at the end. And again, for those who joined late, this is being recorded as well. So and will be provided to everybody that has registered. So I'm unmuting everybody now. Steve, hold on. Here we go. All right, the floor is open. So if anybody has any questions for Steve regarding oneWeigh specifically, or what we've seen today, or in general even, please feel free to just shout out. And if we have none, then we can call it a morning. But
hey guys, it's John Roosman. I just want to say thanks for putting this out there today, and also for the answers to my questions. Surprised I'm the only person who put questions in the Q&A panel, though. Or maybe not.
I wasn't going to call you out,
surprised.
John. I ignored everybody else. No, thank you, John. Nope, you were it. So Steve did a great job, apparently. So thank you for your questions.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? If not, yeah, I appreciate again everybody's time. Steve, thank you for your time this morning. Greatly appreciated. Lots of good stuff in this one. Looking forward to getting it out in the field.
Thanks, Steve. It's very informative.
All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close it down. Like I said, this will be published here momentarily, and we'll get it out in everybody's email box either tomorrow or early next week, as soon as our marketing team can finesse the video. So look forward to talking to everybody in the future. If you have any questions, by all means, give us a call back. We appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.